He still remember the night it began, not because anything loud or dramatic happened, but because it felt wrong in the quietest possible way, like the world had tilted just a few degrees and no one else noticed. It was a graduation gala, one of those overly polished events held in a hotel ballroom that smelled faintly of champagne and new suits, full of young people who still believed the future would politely wait for them. He was there for a colleague, nothing special, just smiling when expected, nodding when required, already counting the minutes until I could leave. Then I saw her. She didn't belong there. Not in a way that made people whisper loudly, but in a way that made the air around her feel heavier. An elderly woman, dressed with deliberate care, pearl earrings, soft powder on her cheeks, lipstick applied with the steady seriousness of someone who understood exactly why appearances mattered. She walked slowly, but with purpose, like she'd rehearsed this moment her entire life. And she was walking straight toward me. At first, I assumed she'd mistaken me for someone else. That happens more often than you think. But her eyes never wavered, not even when people began to stare, not even when the music swelled and laughter rose around us. She stopped inches away from me. Up close, her eyes were the strangest part. Clear. Focused. Not confused. Not fragile. Used, full. As if she'd lived several lifetimes and had finally reached the page she'd bookmarked decades ago. Before I could say a word, she reached into her purse and placed something into my hand. It was an old pocket watch. Heavy. Worn, somehow. The kind you don't see anymore unless it's locked behind glass in a museum or sold by someone who knows exactly what nostalgia costs. Her fingers lingered around mine for just a second longer than polite. Then she said, very softly, "Come back to me." "Not please. Not if you can. Call me back." I opened my mouth, ready to explain that she had the wrong person, ready to apologize for a history I didn't remember sharing, but she had already turned away. No hesitation. No glance over her shoulder. Used can, swallowed by a room that suddenly felt too bright and too young. I stood there, holding that watch, feeling like he'd been handed a sentence without knowing the crime. He didn't know her. He was certain of that. He'd never seen her before in my life. And yet, at night, I didn't sleep. The watch sat on my nightstand, ticking softly, stubbornly, like it was counting something other than time. I remember picking it up, turning it over, noticing the scratches along the casing, the faint engraving worn nearly smooth by years of touch. I told myself it was nothing. Used a strange encounter. Just an old woman chasing a memory that didn't belong to me. 8 years passed. Life did what life always does. It distracted me. Pulled me forward. Work, relationships that almost worked, relationships that failed quietly, the slow realization that adulthood is mostly learning how to live with unanswered questions. But I kept the watch. I don't know why. I never wore it. Never displayed it. I just kept it. In a drawer. Like a letter I wasn't ready to open. Then one summer, during a vacation I hadn't even wanted to take, everything broke open again. I was staying at an old coastal resort, the kind built before modern architecture decided everything needed to be glass and steel. This place still had wood paneling, heavy doors, and hallways that echoed like they remembered secrets. One afternoon, while wandering through a small exhibition hall attached to the hotel, I stopped short in front of a photograph. It was a portrait of a young woman. Not just beautiful in the obvious sense, but arresting, the kind of face that makes you feel like you've interrupted something intimate just by looking. Her eyes held a quiet confidence, her lips curved with the hint of a smile she hadn't quite decided to give yet. The plaque beneath the frame was damaged. The name was missing. He stood there far longer than reasonable, feeling something tighten in my chest. It wasn't the attraction exactly. It was recognition, without memory. A hotel manager eventually noticed my fixation and came over, clearing his throat politely. "That's Eleanor Vale," he said. "She was a stage actress here, long before this place became what it is now. Early 20th century. How long ago?" I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. "Ismail. Her most famous performance was in 1913. He laughed, because that was the only acceptable reaction to the absurd ache blooming in my chest. Then I saw another photograph. And another. In one of them, Eleanor was older. Much older. The lighting harsher. The eyes the same. My hands started shaking before my mind caught up. That night, I pulled the watch from my suitcase and placed it on the bed. It didn't need to be told. It didn't need confirmation. The woman at the gala and the actress in the photograph were the same person. Her name had been Eleanor Vale. And somehow, impossibly, she had been waiting for me. He started digging. Archives. Old programs. Newspaper clippings yellowed at the edges. Eleanor Vale had been brilliant, beloved, fiercely independent until, suddenly, she wasn't there. After one particular season, her career slowed, then faded entirely. No scandal. No explanation. Used a quiet retreat from the spotlight. She never married. She lived alone. And according to a single obituary line I read 3 times just to be sure, she had passed away 8 years before the night she met me. That should have been the end of it. That's the point where a rational person would close the book, accept the mystery, and move on. But I couldn't. Because tucked inside one brittle biography, there was a reference to a book. A theoretical work on temporal displacement. Written by a man whose name I recognized instantly. Professor Nathaniel Crow. My professor. The same man who, years earlier, had dismissed time travel with a smile that felt practiced, like someone deflecting a question they already answered once too often. He visited him the next morning. He looked older, slower, but when I placed the watch on his desk, something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition. Fear. Relief. You shouldn't have that, he said quietly. He asked him if time travel was possible. He didn't laugh. Said, leaned back, and said, it happened once. Used once. And it ruined my life. He told me the rules. Not scientific rules, not equations, but conditions. Objects from the era. Focus. Sleep. Letting go of certainty. He didn't hesitate. He found a coin minted in 1913. He shoved. Bought clothes that felt ridiculous until they didn't. I practiced speaking, not because the words mattered, but because the tone did. Polite. Reserved. Earnest. I lay on the bed, clutching the coin, the watch resting against my chest. And I thought of Eleanor. Not as an old woman. But as the girl in the photograph, standing under stage lights, unaware of the way time would bend itself around her life. I don't remember falling asleep. I remember waking up somewhere else. The room smelled different. The silence felt older. And for the first time in my life, I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was standing in a moment that wasn't meant to exist anymore. He didn't move at first. He just stood there, letting the room tell me where I was. The bed was narrower, the sheets heavier. The wallpaper had a pattern that didn't exist anymore, flowers pressed into repeating symmetry like someone had tried to trap spring inside a wall. Somewhere outside, a carriage rolled past, the sound unmistakable, slow iron against stone. He sat down. My hands were steady, which surprised me. Either expected panic, disbelief, something cinematic. Instead, there was a strange calm, the kind you feel when you finally stop pretending something isn't happening. Either made it. He checked the pocket watch. It ticked, forcefully. The coin was still warm in my palm. He slipped it into my pocket and stood, smoothing my jacket like a man who didn't want to draw attention, even from time itself. The hallway outside was long and softly lit. Voices drifted through doors, laughter that felt unfiltered, less guarded than anything he'd heard in years. He passed a mirror and stopped. He looked, right. Younger, maybe not physically, but somehow aligned. Like this version of me fit the air better. He stepped out into the lobby and immediately realized something important. No one was looking at me. That sounds small, but it mattered. He wasn't a spectacle. He wasn't a glitch. I was just another man in a building full of stories that hadn't learned yet they would end. I asked the concierge for Eleanor Vale's room. He smiled the way people used to smile when they didn't assume you were lying. Miss Vale receives many visitors, he said carefully. Are you expected? He shook my head, honest. Not yet. He gave me a look that said he'd seen worse ideas succeed and handed me directions anyway. Her door was at the end of the hall. He stood there longer than necessary, my rehearsed introduction evaporating with every second. He raised my hand, lowered it, raised it again. Before I could knock, the door opened. A woman stood there, not Eleanor, younger, sharp-eyed, measuring me in a way that made it clear she'd already decided I was inconvenient. Yes, she said. I'm looking for Miss Vale. She sighed, like she'd heard that sentence 1,000 times. Says not receiving it matters. I'm not an admirer, I said too quickly. That earned me an eyebrow. Then you're already doing it wrong. The door closed. I stood there, stunned, then laughed quietly to myself. Of course it wouldn't be easy. Of course the universe wouldn't reward courage with convenience. I tried again at the theater. They knew her there. Everyone did. That was the problem. She's rehearsing. She's resting. She's not available. At one point, a stagehand leaned in and whispered, almost apologetically, "Sir, if she spoke to every man who said he felt something when he saw her, she'd never make it on stage." That stung, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. He was just another stranger with a story he believed was special. He was about to give up for the day when an older gentleman, impeccably dressed, tapped my shoulder. "Try the lake," he said. "She goes there when the noise gets too loud." The lake was quiet in the way only old places are, surrounded by trees that hadn't yet learned how temporary they were. He saw her before she saw me, sitting on a bench, had tilted just enough to shade her eyes, hands folded in her lap like she was holding something fragile inside herself. He took a breath and walked toward her. She looked up. And smiled. Not politely. Not cautiously. Like you smile when someone you forgot to miss suddenly walks back into your life. "You found me," she said. "I was hoping I would," I replied, and immediately hated how inadequate that sounded. She tilted her head, studying my face, searching for something she couldn't name. "Have we met?" "Not yet," I said. "But we will." She laughed, light and genuine. "That's an odd thing to say." "I have a habit of arriving early," I said, surprising myself. She gestured to the bench. "Then sit. You look like a man who's been standing in the wrong places all day." We talked. About nothing, at first. The weather. The lake. The absurdity of being famous for pretending to be someone else. She spoke quickly, passionately, hands moving as if the words alone weren't enough. She was nothing like the photographs. She was better. There was humor in her, an easy warmth that softened the sharp intelligence behind her eyes. She teased me gently, asked questions she didn't wait for answers to, laughed at her own jokes without apology. At one point, she stopped mid-sentence and frowned. "This is strange," she said. "What is?" "You feel familiar," she admitted. "Like a memory I can't quite place." My heart thudded painfully. Maybe we remember each other from somewhere else. She smiled, but there was a shadow behind it. "If that's true, I hope it was somewhere kind." We were interrupted by the woman from the door earlier, her expression tight. "Eleanor," she said sharply, "you're needed." Eleanor stood, smoothing her dress, then hesitated. She looked back at me. "Will I see you again?" she asked, as if the question had already been answered somewhere else. "Yes," I said, with a certainty that startled us both. That night, I snuck into a hotel event I definitely wasn't invited to. I didn't plan it. It just happened. I followed the music, blended into the edges, borrowed confidence from men who believed the world would never tell them no. Eleanor was there, radiant, laughter echoing as she moved through the room like she belonged to every corner of it. I offered my hand. She stared at it, then up at me, amused. "You're persistent." "I prefer inevitable," I said. She rolled her eyes and took my hand anyway. We danced. Not well. Not perfectly. But together. The room faded, the music softened, and for a moment, it felt like we were the only two people who hadn't learned the rules yet. Until her manager appeared. Mr. Aldridge. He was polite in the way men are when they expect obedience. His smile didn't reach his eyes, his hand lingered on Eleanor's arm just a second too long. "Miss Vale," he said, "you're needed elsewhere." Eleanor stiffened. "I'm enjoying myself. And I'm responsible for your future," he replied smoothly. He says flick to me. Which does not include him. "I decide that," she said. Aldridge smiled wider. "Of course. Tomato." She left with him, but she looked back twice. That was how it went for the next 2 days. Stolen moments. Interrupted conversations. A sense of urgency neither of us acknowledged aloud. We walked the city. Shared street food. Laughed at ridiculous things. I told her pieces of the truth, softened, shaped into something that sounded like fiction. She believed me anyway. "You talk like a man who knows how this ends," she said once, quietly. I do, I replied. I just don't know how to stop it. On the third night, she performed. The theater was packed. I sat in the back, heart in my throat, watching her become someone else and somehow reveal more of herself in the process. Everything went as planned until it didn't. She changed the lines. Not much. Just enough. She spoke of a man she'd seen in a dream. A man who felt like home. A man who existed outside the script she'd been given. The audience leaned forward, breathless. Aldrich went pale. He knew then what it would cost. After the curtain fell, he found me. His politeness was gone. You leave tonight, he said. Or you'll regret staying. I'm not leaving, I said. He nodded once, as if disappointed but unsurprised. That was the last clear memory I have before pain. I woke up somewhere dark, hands bound, head pounding. Time passed strangely. When I finally escaped and ran back to the hotel, Eleanor's room was empty. She was gone. Aldrich found me again, calm as ever. She chose her career, he said. You were a distraction. He was lying. He knew it. And so did she. He collapsed onto a bench outside, grief sharp and sudden, until footsteps approached. Are you hurt? A voice asked. He looked up. Eleanor stood there, breathless, eyes fierce. I'm not letting him decide my life, she said. Not anymore. He reached for her, and for a moment, the world aligned. Then the coin fell from my pocket. And time remembered me. The coin hit the ground with a sound that was too small for what it meant. Just a dull little click against stone, barely noticeable, but Eleanor heard it. He saw her eyes drop to it, saw the way her breath caught like she'd just missed a step on a staircase. What's that? She asked. He didn't answer fast enough. Because the truth was already moving, already pulling, already rearranging the rules without asking for permission. The air felt heavier. Not dramatically, not like a storm rolling in, but like gravity had quietly decided to double down on me alone. My chest tightened. My ears rang. The edges of the world blurred, like a photograph losing focus. Eleanor stepped closer. You don't look well. I tried to smile, failed, I think I overstayed my welcome. She crouched and picked up the coin before I could stop her. Turned it over in her fingers. Here bra forward. This date, she said slowly. This don't make sense. It's not from here, I admitted. She looked up at me then, really looked, like she was finally ready to hear the part of the stories she'd been pretending not to notice. Neither are you, she said. He wanted to lie. God, I wanted to lie. Tell her this was nothing, tell her I was just a strange man with strange habits and terrible timing. But they already stolen too much from her by saying less than the truth. So I told her everything. Not in a rush. Not with drama. Just the facts, laid bare, like you do when you're exhausted from carrying a secret that's been growing heavier by the hour. He told her about the future, about the woman she would become, about the night she walked into a room full of strangers just to give a watch back to a man who didn't know her yet. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she sat back on her heels, silent. The lake behind her reflected the evening light, soft and gold, like it was trying to be gentle on purpose. So, she said finally, in your world. I don't get to keep you. My throat closed. No, and you came anyway. Yes. She smiled then. Not happy. Not sad. Just understanding. That sounds like something I would do. The pull became stronger. My hands started shaking. I don't think I have much time, I said. She stood, grabbed my jacket, held on like she could anchor me through sheer will. Then stay, she said. If this world is trying to take you, let it fight me for you. He wanted to believe that love could outmuscle physics. That devotion could rewrite rules written before either of us existed. But time don't negotiate. It just collects. The watch in my pocket grew warm, almost burning. The sound of its ticking got louder, impossibly loud, until it felt like it was echoing inside my bones. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't mean to make you fall in love with someone temporary. She shook her head fiercely. You didn't, she said. You reminded me how to choose. Her grip loosened. The world tilted. And then it folded. He woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, the familiar ceiling of my hotel room staring back at me like nothing had ever happened. No lake. No Eleanor. no 1913. Used silence. He sat up, heart racing, and for a few seconds, hope tried to lie to me. Tried to tell me it had all been a dream. Then I saw the watch. It was on the nightstand. Open. The hands had stopped. I don't know how long I stayed there, staring at it. Minutes. Hours. Time felt optional after that. I went back to the lake. In my world, it was smaller. Dirtier. The trees thinned out, the water clouded with debris. The bench where we they talked was gone, replaced by a sign warning people not to feed the birds. I stood there until sunset, waiting for something I knew wouldn't happen. Grief don't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it just moves in quietly and rearranges the furniture until nothing feels familiar anymore. I stopped going out. Stopped answering calls. Days blurred together. The exhibition hall became my refuge, standing in front of Eleanor's photograph like it was a window instead of a wall. People worry. I ignored them. One morning, I woke up on the floor, unsure how they gotten there. That's when they found me. Doctors said exhaustion. Stress. The usual words people use when they don't know how to measure heartbreak. As they checked my eyes with a pen light, something strange happened. I saw white. Bright, clean, endless. And for just a second, I wasn't in that room anymore. I was standing somewhere else. The air was warm. The light was soft. And Eleanor was there. Not young. Not old. Used hair. She smiled, the way she always had, like she'd known all along this wouldn't be the end of the story. You're late, she said. I laughed. I got lost. She reached for my hand. This Time, nothing pulled me away. Time, it turns out, isn't a straight line. It's a circle. And love is the thing that remembers how to close it. Before I go, I want to say this. If you've ever felt a connection that didn't make sense, a pull you couldn't explain, a love that felt bigger than logic, bigger than timing, bigger than fear, maybe it wasn't meant to fit neatly into your life. Maybe it was meant to change you. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you lost or someone you're still waiting for, tell me in the comments. I read everyone. Share your thoughts, your memories, your questions. And if you stayed with me until the end, thank you, truly, for listening. Some stories don't end. They just wait to be remembered.